that night?
I remember everything going black. And the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. My parents were there, and they told me Taylor was dead and that I'd lost my best friend.
Never did sign my pen. Is that a beat? And we're at the first witness?
Do you need another pen, Your Honor?
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Hobson, I know this is very difficult for you, but I'm just going to ask you a few questions to clarify what happened on the night of the accident. You don't think that Damien was in any condition to drive, do you?
Not at all.
So why did you agree to get in the car with him?
Well, Vanessa, Vanessa just, I didn't want to be a nag, but Vanessa said everything would be okay.
So do you think that Damien made poor decisions that night?
Yes.
But was he the only person to make poor decisions that night?
No.
Isn't it true, Ms. Hobson, that you said trusting Damien was the worst decision you ever made?
Yes.
So why did you not speak up?
I tried, but every time I'd say something, it would just get shrugged off.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hobson. Would you like a handkerchief?
Yeah.
Ms. Hobson, at the bar, isn't it true that you said you figured Damien had a couple of hours to sober up, so you didn't say anything?
I guess I'd hoped he'd sobered up, or she'd sobered up.
Was it a wise decision on your behalf to stay silent?
I didn't stay silent. I spoke up. I asked her to drive carefully.
Ms. Hobson, are you aware that in the car you were, in fact, distracting Ms. Dawson?
Distracting Miss Dawson?
I'm afraid I didn't get the answer there. I'm just trying to see what happened on the matter. Is it true that you were aware that you were distracting Ms. Dawson?
If a plea for mine and Vanessa's life would be called distracting, then yes. I guess I'm aware that I've distracted her.
Isn't it also true that you were sitting directly behind Vanessa Sullivan?
Yes.
Did you have your seatbelts on?
Yes.
So while you were sitting directly behind Vanessa Sullivan, her headdress must have been directly in front of you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was raining that night, right?
Yes.
And it was dark.
Yes.
So on a dark, rainy night with a headdress right in front of you, how can you say with absolute certainty that there wasn't anything to appear in Miss Dawson's path on the road?
Because I was watching where we were going. I can move my head around the headrest.
Well, did you see the speedometer?
No, I did not look at the speedometer.
Can you tell us an exact speed that you think the car was speeding at?
It seemed like 80. by the time, at that point I was so nervous. Everything just seems like a big blur. Just,
Is it possible that things were seeming like a blur because, as you stated earlier, you too were tipsy?
I think at that moment, I was so scared for my life that being tipsy had nothing to do with it.
Don't you think that the same would have applied to Ms. Dawson?
She was, yes, but she was supposed to be the designated driver.
So, on the night that you were tipsy and you were nervous and it was dark and it was raining, you can still say with absolute certainty that nothing was in the road?
Yes.
And even though you think you were speeding, you can't give us an exact number, can you?
No, I cannot.
Well, then, no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I am tempted to stop the trial now, put the video up on the screen, and use this as a teaching opportunity because there was so much objectionable material on both sides. And this is not bad. I mean, you guys are 2 weeks into this. Part of the reason we're so tough, especially on the two of you, is because you guys have such potential. Ali, we've got to completely rework your cross. You can't ask open-ended questions except for very rarely, and you must have asked 10 of them. For example, hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out where you started. How can you say there wasn't anything? Can you tell us? All of those, a good witness who's a veteran will just run on for 30 seconds about, well, I was sitting in the back seat, but you know how you can see between the two seats? I was watching the road, and as I was watching the road, even though it was raining, I could see just as good as Danny could, and I was watching the road right before the wreck, and nothing came out. They'll just keep running and keep running. So you can't ask questions like that. You ask her, can you tell us the speed? Well, you're opening it up for her to say, well, to me it seemed like 80, but hell, we could have been going faster. We might have been going 90. I don't know. We were flying. Trees were buzzing by. A good witness would just keep running and running and running. I'm not a good witness. Never played a witness, but I have had witnesses run on me like that. It is a horrible feeling because you can't stop them, and they just keep going and going and going. All right. So we got to work on nice, tight, closed-ended questions. And basically the way to do it is you write out her testimony for her in 5 or 6 word questions, and they're really statements that you put question marks at the end of, And if you get with me, we can work it out and you can have it corrected in 30 minutes. All right, objectionable material. You got shot down on one at the beginning. It happens. And admission by party opponent is always going to come in. I think you still have to make the objection. Some people would say no. It shows the judge that you're paying attention. But if you get shot down, I know from sitting behind that table that it's hard to stand up to make the next objection. All right? You can't be scared to do that. She made statements like, Danny was drunk. All right? She can't have that statement. She might be able to say, it seemed to me Danny was drunk. Maybe, if the foundation was laid, but she definitely can't say Danny was drunk. Vanessa seemed worried. That one she probably can. You can still object, and the judge might make her ask one question or something. That she was going 80 miles per hour. And then afterwards, I might have objected a second time because she just asked the question, well, how fast did it seem? She still hadn't laid any foundation as to how she can make that guess. You know, so you might object again when you've got an unsteady attorney on the other side who might just give up. Right now, if somebody were to object to you again like that, what you have to do is, you know, do you drive a car? How long have you been driving? You know, have you ever driven 60 miles an hour? Have you ever driven 7 miles? You know, things like that. So you know what it's like to be going 80 miles an hour. How fast did it seem you were going that night? You know, so that's how that foundation would be laid. But an unsteady or unsure of themselves attorney might just give up completely. So I might have objected to it again. In your direct, do you not remember the crash at all? Because you answered a question with, we were swerving, and then we hydroplaned, and that stopped. And then the next question was, well, what happened after the crash? I mean, there was no, we hydroplaned and we hit a pole, we hit a tree. It was just, we hydroplaned. And then what do you remember? Well, after the crash. So, you know, tell us about the crash.
I don't think she remembers
She
that
doesn't.
part. I think she blacked
She
out
says-
Okay.
or if they actually.
Okay, well then tell us that. That's fine, if that's the case. But say, you know, we hydroplaned, and the next thing I know, I was waking up in a crashed car. You know.
She doesn't.
She
The
doesn't.
next thing she remembers is waking up
That
in
we
the
in the
hospital.
hospital then.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good too. I mean, because that's emotional. The next thing I remember, I was in a hospital bed. Yeah. Did they tell you how you got there? Yeah, they told me they brought me by ambulance because we had crashed. All right. Why did you agree to get in the car? That's another one that, you know, it's kind of a safe question, but a good one this might run. And you're probably going to get that question from a lot of people, so you need to plan out an answer to it. Do you think that it was only Danny that made poor decisions that night? My answer would be, well, lots of people made poor decisions that night, but Danny was the one that drank for 9 hours. Danny was the one that did this. Danny did that. She drank this, and that. So while it was probably bad for me to get in the car, you know, Danny made a lot of choices, you know, something like that. You know, several times, Ali, you said, "Isn't it true you said trusting Danny was?" When did she say it?
Affidavit.
Okay, affidavits aren't testimony. You could actually make an objection that, you know, he's presenting evidence that, or facts that aren't in evidence. But the way, I mean, you don't even need to say that. You know, you just ask her, isn't it true trusting Danny was, you know, the worst decision you've ever made? And if she says no, then you can bring out her affidavit. You know, but there were several times you said, isn't it true that you said such and such? Just drop the isn't it true part and just say, now you said blank. And if she says no, then you've got her affidavit to hit her with. In her direct, did she say that she was tipsy? I don't think she did. I think it's in the affidavit.
She said,
On one of his questions, he said, now you stated earlier you were tipsy.
Stated in the affidavit.
Well, yeah, but he said stated earlier. And I looked at you for an objection for, you know, no, she never said that on the stand. Yeah. And then the very next question after that was, don't you think Miss Dawson, whatever, any question that starts with, don't you think about somebody else, you should already be standing up for speculation. So that's the other one I was looking at you about. So, the lesson is, when you get shot down on an objection, don't be afraid to stand right back up. And in fact, a lot of judges will credit you for, you know, having the confidence to stand right back up. And usually, you won't annoy a judge with too many objections. But if you watch them, you can tell. I mean, occasionally that will happen. But if you just watch the judge, you can tell if you need to stop with all the objections. So don't be afraid. Tighten up questions, and we will address all these issues this week. So both of you just get with me. All right. Coach Mason.
All right.
That was my brief version.
Coach covered most everything. do a little bit of a good job on the direct examination, do a little bit better job of emphasizing statements like challenged, accepted, and the stuff about the caddy. I think you change your inflection there. I think what you do is you add a pause there, and you really want to let those statements kind of sit in with the jury. All the things that he did, all the reckless acts that he did. Maybe throw in a pause, maybe emphasize it. Should we try to explain why she got in the car? I have that note written down in direct. You know that's coming on cross-examination. And I think there's a good way for us to respond to that, but get with us throughout the week to do that. Like Coach said, you've got to come out with a pre-canned response to that. You got to have one that's already made up.
Because you're going to get it from just about every team.
If you get that question on cross-examination, why did you get in the car? At that point, you can come up with, you can certainly cover anything that you think is pertinent in the affidavit, but also cover anything, you can make up stuff, because the rule in AMTA is if it's on cross-examination, it's directly responsive to the question, it's not contradictory to the affidavit, you can make up anything you want. I mean, you can almost go into, I mean, you can't say something to the effect of, well, he put a gun in my